What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P here. Another episode of Steelers Touching Under. We are talking day two players. Players that will be drafted on day two of the draft. So that's basically rounds 2, rounds 3 to watch at the NFL Scouting Combine. Now, the NFL Scouting Combine, by the time you watch this, will kick off in under 48 hours time. Technically, parts of the combine have started, but the drills will start come Thursday American time. It will start Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Thursday, the February 29th. Then it goes into Friday, March 1st, then Saturday, March 2nd, then Sunday, March 3rd. And it starts off with defensive linemen and linebackers, moves into defensive backs, tight ends. Then there's probably the favorites or the most watched positions, which will be quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, followed by offensive linemen to close it out. So with that in mind, yesterday, and you go back and look, and I'll link that channel. We talked about my day one guys to watch, 9 day one guys to watch the NFL Scouting Combine. Most of them were on the offensive side of the football. You can go back and check that out. But overall, my top 75, this is the theme that you've got to remember. Top 75 across 3 days. I spread them evenly based on the picks. So the Steelers only have one first round pick. Therefore, I've given you 9 guys to look at in that video. What to remember about round 1, we covered that in that video. We didn't have a 50-50 first-round split this year, but we did have a 50-50 first-round split in terms of right and left tackles or guys that could play either side and left tackles. That's important in terms of where the Steelers need to pick to shore up the O-line. Well, the overall theme last year was trenchy and not trendy. This year, it's trenchy and trendy. So we'll talk about that when we do the overview of all 75 players when I close out the first all 3 days of the draft. Remember, I always consider trade up and trade down scenarios. QB out of the question. That was for my round 1 situation. QB in the question for day 2. And that the sexy pick won't be it in the first round. That kind of was the case, certainly last year for some people. That probably will be the case this year, where the Steelers won't be drafting a quarterback. And to a lot of people, that's the sexy pick for this year. All right, so the 9 guys in the first round, just to recap, was Joe Alt, Talisi Fuaga, Ola Fashanu, Quinion Mitchell, Jackson Powers Johnson, Tyler Guyton, Amiris Mims, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., and Zach Frazier. These are the guys that I think I'd be cool with the Steelers driving these guys in the first round. They're guys to watch in the combine. Reminder, you've probably heard all these names before, so it's probably not rocket science that I've actually said that as well. So, yeah, probably not rocket science to you guys, but hey, just a good recap for you there. All right, cool. Now, let's get to the day 2 guys. So let's look at offense first. There's 29 guys we're going to go through. So simple maths is offense is 13 players. There's going to be 16 defensive guys. I had one guy counted double, so you can sort of tell how I am on him. All right, on offensive side, Jordan Morgan is an offensive tackle out of Arizona. He's rumored to probably go in the first round as well. I think he's slid back between kind of 32 and pick 38. A lot of times he's sort of ranked now in a lot of the different drafts and boards somewhere between as high as like the 26, 27 best player, all the way back to about 40. But I think you'll see him go somewhere in that 32 to 37, 38 mark, the first 5 picks of the second round. He's just unfortunate. In other years, he would probably be a top 3 tackle. This year, it's a very deep tackle draft. So that's kind of why the situation is there with Jordan Morgan falling back into the second. Then I've got Jalen Polk out of Washington. Really like him. Can do a lot. Can do some awesome catches. A bit like a George Pickens light. The reason why I think you go get him is if he's available. If you want to draft a wide receiver, if there's a one-on wide receiver, he could be a really interesting weapon for you. I think he can play all over. He's got a good route tree, I feel. I'm really excited to see him at the combine and let him prove. He'll show you some cool catches. He'll get some average throws from some quarterbacks, and you'll see him do that, play those catches really well, and you'll see him make some big highlight reel type catches. And then I think it's about what's his route running like. Zach Frazier, we talked about that. I've got him twice because my position of having him in the first round set of guys was that if the Steelers traded back till the end of the first round with like Kansas City at 32 or Detroit at 29, because those guys have 64 and 61, that could be worth the trade back. So really, he's probably the day 2 pick. That's why I've got him on this list. Then you got Cedric Franpran. He's the 3rd ranked center. That's probably where the Steelers might go. They might go Amiris Mims in the first, Cedric Van Pran in the second. His job at the combine is to prove that the gap between him and Jackson Powers-Johnson and Zach Frazier is minimal, if anything. And I'm excited to see that because he's got some height to him, Cedric Van Pran, and played a lot of college, a really experienced guy, even though he's not like had 5-6 years in college. Malachi Corley, wide receiver, I love. Those of you that follow the channel know that I've been talking about him with Shannon for a number of weeks now. Awesome guy, like 5'11", like tall 5'10" guy. Like in terms of almost the edge of 5'11". If he's not 5'11", we'll see what he measures off that. Probably around 210, 215 pound wide receiver. He's like Sky Moore on steroids. This guy could be really, really good. He could open up some really dynamic things in the Steelers offense. So he's a guy to watch. Watch him move up the wide receiver boards as well at the combine. He'll really show you something. Then you got Patrick Ball, the tackle out of Houston off the top of my head. He's a guy that kind of excites me late. So if the Steelers were to get a second by trading back, got a second tackle spot, and they traded back in the first and got a cornerback, he'd be a tackle. He's probably the top tackle in the second round outside of Morgan. So definitely he's on my list to watch to see what the gap is for him and Morgan between the top guys that we talked about in yesterday's video. Then you got Sanders, the tight end out of Texas. Now, you'd be like, why do we have a tight end here? Steelers didn't really throw to their tight end. Kind of, we got to know what they're going to do with. They got to know what they're going to do with Pat Freiermuth. And therefore, if they were to not re-sign him, they would need a decent tight end. Secondly, the Arthur Smith offense. I said this on a video a few weeks back, probably about 2 weeks ago now. Don't be surprised to Steelers not draft wide receiver. Watch them fill it in free agency. Maybe they don't, or maybe they draft wide receiver late in the draft. And watch them maybe go get a tight end in anywhere between the third and the fourth. If Sanders slips to the third, they could go get him because that would help in the Arthur Smith offense. He's probably the best tight end, roughly, besides Brock Bowers in this draft. So that's why I've got him on this list. If he falls back, he had an awesomely productive year for the Longhorns. So he's a guy that, you never know. Speaking of Longhorns, Adonai Mitchell, a really rangy wide receiver, about 6'3", about 196, 200, early 200 pounds. Really kind of George Pickens sort of style body. Pickens probably a bit bulkier, but he can make every catch. And I think you put him with Pickens, that's going to be huge if you can get wide receivers open, if you can make quick catches. His route running is, though, what I want to see at the combine. That's why I've got him on my list for an offensive standpoint. Then you've got Troy Fatano, who probably will end up going the first. He's an offensive tackle that a lot of people projected shifting to guard. Daniel Jeremiah, he's rocketing up Daniel Jeremiah's list from like the mid-top 20s of the top 50 players right into, I think he's ahead now of Mims, and he might be ahead as well of Guyton as well. But Daniel Jeremiah does caveat that he probably will go kick inside, but he has mocked him to the Steelers a couple of times. So that's kind of interesting. Then you got Michael Pratt, the QB. I've kind of got an early day 3 round grade on Michael Pratt, but because of the run that will happen on quarterbacks in the first, he will go in the third. So I think when Michael Pratt out of Tulane, the QB, that's why I've got him here on this list. Let's watch him. Let's see the gap. Xavier Leggett, big body wide receiver, probably like 213, 215 pounds. He should measure in there. About 6'2", 6'3", can do everything. And he'll be actually, he probably might even, he may even measure over 220 pounds or weigh in at over 220 pounds. So he's a guy to watch. Could be a really good weapon. Something different to George Pickens. Just a bulky, big guy, run around a lot of routes. Really interesting perspective from him. I've got Christian Jones there. Now, maybe I've got the Longhorns goggles on, but Christian Jones as a tackle, I think he'd play really well at right tackle for the Steelers. He's probably an early day 3 guy, but I could see him slipping in with he had a really good senior bowl. He shocked everyone. I talked about him 2 to 3 weeks before, and I've talked to him about him 6 months ago on the channel as well. I was watching pop. He probably could have come out last year in the draft, chose to sit back. I think it's helped him a lot. If you go back and watch Longhorns highlights, he's always, and I mean, if you watch the full film, he is always in the mix when there's a big play that happens. He's just always around the ball. But I like Christian Jones. Keen to see if he can move himself into the day 2 guys. I've kind of predicted that he will based on his performance at the combine. And then JJ McCarthy. I'm kind of just keen to watch JJ McCarthy at quarterback purely because I never, like up until the sort of second half of the college season, I did not think this guy was going in the first 3 rounds. He's moved way up the board. Some people think he'll go in the first. I still think he could slip back because I do think Penix could slip back. I think Bo Nix will slip back. But JJ McCarthy, I'm keen to see at the combine, as Daniel Jeremiah's been teasing. His tape, when you watch more of it, you like more what you see. I just wonder. I don't think it'd be deeply different to what we get with Kenny Pickett, but let's see. Let's see him make those throws. Let's see him compete against some dynamic quarterbacks, and especially some quarterbacks that are meant to be going very early in the first. All right. Next is the defensive guys. So we've got more defensive guys than we do offense. Probably no surprise here, particularly because I think they're going to go offense in the first round unless they go cornerback. We have a lot of linebackers, so we're going to start with them on the list. We've got Junior Colson, Edwin Cooper, Peyton Wilson, who had some injury concerns through college, James Williams, who I've got at safety, but some people are predicting he'll convert to linebacker out of Miami, Jeremiah Trotter. They're the linebackers. Now, my rankings are like Colson and Cooper jostling. I like the play of Wilson and the bigger body better than what I like of Trotter, but I want to see Trotter test. And then you've got James Williams there, who I actually have him as a safety. So that's how I've kind of got these guys. I didn't really want to rank them on this list, but as I talk about them, I kind of feel like I need to rank them. In that case, we'll talk about cornerbacks. So, and I mean, Cooper DeJean can be someone a safety. He could go in the first. A lot of people have him now. My round is a second round grade on him. I had a second round grade on Joey Porter with a potential to play like a first rounder in his first rookie season. That is what I said going into the draft. Stills got him in 32 in the second round, right? But Cooper DeJean, you've got him. Nate Wiggins, again, another guy who could go in the first 25 picks as well, still depending on the grade. I really like Josh Newton out as TCU, but he's probably around 3 guy. Kalen King as well. His job at the Combine's kind of work out whether he's going to be a second round or a third round player out of Penn State. I think the Steelers would be really interested in drafting him as well, because if you go and get Kalen King, you pair someone up from Penn State, you pair Joey Porter up with someone he's familiar with. He shines on tape. I think he's a really interesting prospect for the Steelers, particularly in the third round, or trading back into the third round with that extra fourth that you've got if he's still available toward the end of it. Cool. Well, then we'll move on to one outside linebacker here, Chris Bracewell out of Alabama. And you go, hang on, what? And he's just fallen out of Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 as well. Why have you got an outside linebacker? The Steelers have got TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and you've got Nick Herbig there. Why the heck would you put an outside linebacker in that? And that is because this guy has probably got a back end of the first grade production on him, or an early second. If he is sitting there in the third round, I'm open to it. You can never have enough pass rushes. The Steelers overuse at times TJ and Highsmith. Herbig, I think, will turn into something. But the Steelers give themselves options then in the next couple of years if they want to move Highsmith on. They give themselves options to be younger. They give themselves often options in package. I don't think he'll be there for the Steelers, but I'm just saying if this guy falls, you don't ignore it on a BPA approach to the NFL draft. You don't move it. All right, safety. I didn't mention Cameron Kitchens. He kind of fell differently because I covered James Williams on the linebacker. He and James Williams played together at Miami. He's another guy that could go in the end of the first, but I do think he'll slip into the first sort of 8 to 10 picks of the second round. So that's where Cameron Kitchens, but he does need to have a good scouting process, whether that's at the Combine or his pro days. Then we move into defensive line, defensive tackle. So we've got a number of guys here. Trevondo Sweat, who's just slipped outside Jeremiah's top 50 in the 2.0. Michael Hall Jr., who Mike Tomlin rumored to do a lot, and then pictures of it. He did a lot with Michael Hall Jr. at the Senior Bowl out of Ohio State. I have a third round grade on him, early fourth round grade. I don't have a second round grade, so I really hope he's not picked there. I think the Steelers invested in what they invested in Benton last year. That's the way to go in terms of that. But hey, if he's there in the third. Then there's Braden Fisk. I love Braden Fisk. I'm worried he's not going to be there in the third round for the Steelers. Out of Miami, played at Western Michigan. Again, if you're a sub to the channel or if you've watched a few of our videos now, you'd know I've talked a lot about him with Shannon White. He's probably someone we're going to keep talking about. Love Braden Fisk. Love what he's done. Proven production. Lights up the play. He's just a baller, man. He just likes to play NFL football or likes to play American football. That's what it is. I mean, all these guys say they do, but Braden Fisk, he plays like a dude. He's awesome. Marshawn Keeland, or Neeland, sorry, out of Maryland off the top of my head. He is a DL in a 3-4 or an edge rusher in a 3-4, not so much necessarily interior. I'm interested to see what he measures in at. Right now, I've seen him projected at 6'3", 275. Probably a bit light for what we need him to play at the Steelers, but if he measures in at anything above 280, he can put on that weight as he comes to the pros. I like him. He's someone that seems to have gone from a day 3 pick to a day 2 pick. So I want to see that. I want to see him cement that in this at the Combine. And you got Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. Really like him. He seems to have slipped back from a definite second round player, possibly into the third round now. But let's watch and see how he competes at one of the most important parts of the draft process. But hey, that is my 29 guys. 29 guys that I have second round or day two, second and third round grades on, day two grades on, to watch at the NFL Scouting Combine starting Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the drill parts of it and going all the way through the weekend. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of these guys? Have you got some favorites here? Is there a guy you like at a particular position? Is there a position you want in round 2 or in round 3 or one over the other? Are you keen on them trading up, trading back in, trading back, all the different scenarios? You let me know. Is there someone you even hate on this list that you can't believe I put there? You let me know in the comments. We will come back to them. Always keen on those. There's been some really good comment discussion going on the channel of late, and it's really making for an awesome experience for the community out there. I'll be back in the next 24 hours after this goes live with the day 3 guys to watch. So you've got everyone lined up by the time 3 p.m. rolls around on Thursday afternoon when the combine drills start happening. I'm Matty P. As always, go Steelers.